Hi, Tom from bkmnutrition.com, and today I want to talk about controlling your binging urges when you are on a diet. This might be a show prep diet, it might be a diet that you're just doing to lose weight, it might be a diet that you are doing because you have to restrict certain foods because you are allergic to them or have an intolerance to them, and you want to think of a way to stop yourself eating the foods that you like which are causing the intolerance. So there's a few things to identify before we go on to the techniques that I use with clients to help them control binging, and it's very important for you to actually identify the source of your binging and why you want to eat or overeat a lot of food. If you don't identify those, then you can never create an action plan to deal with that, and all the techniques I'm going to suggest at the end of this video will only essentially serve as a plaster on a very big open wound. In order to make sure that that issue is dealt with, you need to identify the triggers that occur which are causing it, otherwise they'll keep on happening, and you'll get frustrated with your lack of efforts. So let's firstly think about the common cues associated with binging. Now I just want to preface this by saying that I'm not an expert in disordered eating. I don't have a psychological qualification in disordered eating. What I'm going to discuss with you has come from my own experience, my own reading, my own education with clients, working with clients, talking to other people in the field who are psychological experts, and I've built certain things that I use with clients based on those practices. So I'm not an eating disorder specialist practitioner with a qualification. All my stuff is self-taught, self-educated. It does work, but I want to make sure you're not thinking this is clinical advice. It's not clinical advice. Always please consult with your doctor or physician before you undertake any sort of nutritional or psychological program. But okay, so that's out of the way. Hopefully I don't get sued for what I'm about to say. So first, we want to identify the problem. So why are you binging in the first place? Normally this is created by a trigger. Something will have happened which will have caused you to eat, because generally we don't just get ideas into our heads that we want to eat. There's something that happens which triggers that cue. And one of the common cues that I see is that the diet is too restrictive, and many people on contest diets especially will get these binging triggers because while they're normally off season, which means that they're not dieting, when they're off season they can eat whatever they want. And as soon as they get into contest dieting, which is very restrictive in terms of a calorie deficit, you have to eat clean, for want of a better word, you will get to that point where you haven't had a food for a long time, say like a pizza or something like that, and what happens is you just start craving those foods, because generally what happens on people when they do contest diets, they follow some diet which has been put together by some sort of expert diet, competition diet or whatever else. Unfortunately, that diet generally tends to be very bland and very restrictive. So you're talking things like just chicken and rice 3 times a day or 5 times a day, chicken and broccoli, chicken and asparagus, steak and asparagus, all those sorts of things. It's very bland and it's very unexciting. The food is not mentally stimulating. So because your brain is not mentally stimulated by the food, it's just food to fulfill a process to get a result. There's no entertainment of the brain there. The brain wants to have lots of textures and different colors and tastes. And if you're just looking at white chicken or white rice every single meal, you're going to get very bored and you start to crave more excitement in your meals. And that's where many people get that restrictive nature, because they can go for 3 or 4 days eating that sort of food. They train in the gym, they start to get the results, everything else. And despite getting the results and despite the food working and actually fulfilling their nutritional requirements, there is that thing that they're just not entertained by the food. So in that case, if that is you and you identify with that as a major problem, go out of your way to make your food more interesting. So add colors to its textures. So adding spices like Cajun or peri peri or tikka, all these things, not tikka masala, tikka, all these things are essentially 0 calories or very low calories. They can add spice to your food, get more taste to your food, so it's more entertaining. With rice, you can add pilau rice seasoning to it. With pasta, you can add a very small scoop of pasta sauce. A case in point is when I was dieting for my last show, which was the British finals back in 2015. that for that show, I was eating white fish and white rice as 2 of my meals in the day because I had to hit a certain level of conditioning, and that is the food that I had to eat. That was just me because of my contest dieting. I accepted that's what I was going to eat, but it was very bland. It was white and white. There was no excitement. When I was eating it, it was just, oh, I just couldn't get through it. What did I do? I added a teaspoon of tikka masala sauce. Now, tikka masala sauce does have fats in and sugars and whatever else. Not something you would normally consider on a contest diet. I added a teaspoon of that to my white fish and rice, mixed it up loads so there was a bit of extra taste, and it was a very fulfilling meal. The cost of that, the calorie cost of that, was about 550 calories, I think, something like that. It wasn't a lot because it was only a teaspoon, but it was something that was manageable. It's something that I could fit into my diet very easily, and it worked. I was able to eat that meal twice a day and look forward to it as well, and only by adding a teaspoon of that sauce. I did heat it up in the microwave, obviously, to make it a bit more palatable, but sometimes I did eat it cold as well. If you've ever eaten cold fish and cold rice, you'll know it's absolutely disgusting. But if you add a bit of tikka masala sauce to it, a very small amount, and it doesn't have to be tikka masala, it could be sweet chili, it could be curry, whatever you fancy, as long as it's a very small amount, you can then enhance the flavour. It's very good. So if that is the case and you've got no excitement in your meals, try that. That will help address that. But also just check that your calorie deficit is not too severe. You're not restricting yourself too much in the week and then going on a massive cheat day binge on the weekend. It's very easy to actually move some of the cheat day food, the overeating food, into the week to give yourself little wins through the week, which makes dieting harder. Remember, talking about calorie deficit over an average of a week, of a month here to lose body fat. It doesn't have to be all in on the weekend, and many people do ruin their diet by going on these massive cheat day benders on the weekend. So have a think about that, maybe moving your diet around. If your coach doesn't think about that as an option, maybe you need a new coach, just saying that. Okay, so stress is another one. So stress is something that all of us can relate to. If you've ever tried to do a diet, have a stressful situation in your house or in your work, and what happens as a result of that, you start want to go eating. You want to go and eat some food. I still get those sorts of things, and I'm a nutritionist with over 10 years experience. I've dieted for bodybuilding shows for over 10 years as well. And I still, when I get stress cues, I still start thinking about eating food and eating chocolate and stuff like that. It's a natural defense. It's by our subconscious brain. It knows we'll feel better if we eat those foods. So it gives us that cue, oh, you're not feeling very well, or you're not feeling very happy, you're very stressed. Let's go and eat some of this chocolate or this nice food. That will make you feel better. It knows that. I refer it to the muncher brain in my book and in my practice. It's a subconscious action, or it comes out, it's an instinctual, and it says, eat these foods, you will feel better. It's trying to make you happy. However, when you do eat these foods, afterwards it goes back to sleep, and your logical brain comes out and goes, why do we do that? And now you feel guilty. That's very, very common. That happens a lot. So in order to alleviate that, you might want to look at, is there stressful situations happening? How can you address those situations? Go back to where the stress happened, go back and assess the trigger and see what happened there. That I have done other videos on that, so I won't go into too much detail here. But if you identify the root cause of that stress, and you then put in plans as how to deal with that stress, what's called an if this then scenario. If you do that, you will have already these inbuilt things to deal with those stresses and your response to it. So I have done a thing, it's called if this then planning. I've looked through my other videos, it's there. Nutritional deficiency, it's not normally something I see with clients now, especially in the Western world, but sometimes a diet can be so restrictive that you actually have a nutritional deficiency, and the body is giving you these cravings to get those nutrients. So you can find it on the net. There's some sort of table. If you're craving this, it means you're deficient in this. If you're craving this, it means you're deficient in this. There's a whole list of them. Personally, if I'm craving chocolate, I'm not going to eat some celery for that. I'm just going to go eat some chocolate. But there is those things. You can get those nutritional deficiencies from those foods. Personally, I would have it, if you're getting these sort of cues, obviously you've got to narrow it down. Look at your diet. Is it the same 1 or 2 food groups every single day. You know, if you are eating just chicken and rice every single meal, which is just an example, there's potentially some deficiencies there in terms of potentially fiber, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, etc. So potentially you could get around with that with vitamin tablets, but ideally you want to get those sorts of things from food. So maybe assess the diet. Is it too restrictive in terms of your choices of food? Can you substitute in other things and still have the same calories? Tiredness is a major cause of binging, and now being tired per se is not something that's going to make you gain weight, although people do think that's the case. If I'm tired, then I start to gain weight. It's not really that. If you're tired, you are stressed, you might hold more water, which yes will gain you weight, but it's not body fat. The tiredness reduces your ability to make proper cognitive decisions. You're less mentally alert, and what happens is the muncher brain comes out and starts to say, well, let's eat that. It's a very easy option because you don't have to think about the food. So if you're mentally tired, you want the easiest win to a solution, the route, the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is normally the high calorie food you can just pick up in the shop and buy. So be aware, if you are tired, potentially there is some issues and you might make poor decisions. So look at your sleep habits. Maybe you need to be looking at doing that. I think I have done a video on sleep. If not, I will certainly do one in the next couple of days to help address that. Environmental cues. So is your environment that you're living in giving you cues for binging? Now, if you're unsure of this, I have a test you can take on my website. It's called the Diet Ecosystem Test. You can find it on my website. Just go to bknutrition.com. It's there, and right at the bottom of the page. And if you take that test, it will ask you certain questions about your environment that you're in. There's 3 environments. There's social, that's with you and your friends going out for a night out or whatever. There's work, obviously at work, and then there's family. So those 3 environments are where we are normally, unless you live on your own, you don't see anybody, you don't do anything, in which case you'll only have the social environment. But if you go to work, if you have a family, if you have friends and that, you'll have all those 3 environments. So one of those environments, or potentially all 3, are not helping with your dieting or your weight loss or your fat loss goals. Now an example of this, and I refer to this in a few of my other videos, one of my clients, and actually this is quite common with a lot of my clients, but this one particular example, that in their office they had something called the diabetes table, which was referred to a plate or a table of food which had plates of donuts on and cakes and cookies. And the fact that they even called it the diabetes table, they knew it was the wrong type of food to eat for them and not right to have it in their office. They still had it there, and that was literally within a couple of arms reach of my client's desk. So if that's the case, that's an environmental issue. It's not helping. You've got constant cues seeing these things coming into your line of vision. If you've got to walk past that table a lot, then you're going to pick stuff up. Same at home. If you've always got like bowls of chocolates, and this happens at Christmas a lot when you've got celebrations and all sorts of stuff all over the place, chocolate everywhere. The cues are there, they're easy, you can pick stuff up, it's easy to eat. So this might then trigger you into an eating binge, especially if you're trying to diet. So assess your environments. And then again, you can go to take the test for that. It's a more detailed test to give you a full report and some advice on what to look for. That will give you a bigger overview of that. So environmental cues, definitely one to look for. And linked into that would be your friends, your social circle, because even though you might not be out with your friends, they might be posting on social media about all the foods they're eating. They might be tempting you because they think it's funny sometimes to send you pictures of cakes and stuff. So just assess, are your friends helping towards your eating, towards your weight loss or fat loss goals, or are they hindering that? Are they putting in place things like, say, when you're going out, they're always picking restaurants which are super high calorie, which don't have a menu online you can check first before you go to it? Are they always buying you presents of food? Are they always criticizing your diet? Are they always putting you down because you're trying to diet? All these things, just have a think about it, because it does happen a lot, and it's not normally something they do consciously. It's just a bit of banter and stuff like that. But it might be worth just mentioning to them, look, this is serious, I want to do this, please can you help me? Please don't do all these things you're doing at the moment. So do assess your friends. It's one of those ones we see a lot of, and friends do sometimes go overboard and cause you to binge. Okay, so that aside, all those other things, let's say you've assessed all those things, and it's just these situations that keep popping up, and now we can think about how to deal with them. So there's a couple of techniques. The first one is called riding the wave. Now this is a cue technique. So what happens is you're not hungry, you're not thinking about food, you walk through a house or whatever, you see a plate of donuts, instantly you want a donut. What happens there is, because you like donuts and you see a donut, that you instantly get this, you associate with a donut, you get a dopamine release, which is your pleasure hormone, and it says, we like donuts, we would like to eat a donut. It's something called hedonic eating. It's not actually you're hungry because you weren't consciously looking for food. You see the donut, I fancy that. So you get this hedonic cue of dopamine release. Now the reason that dopamine is released, it's a signal that you like donuts, you enjoy them, and it's an action. It stimulates you to go and get that donut. Now, for example, if there's a plate of Sprouts, you would still recognize it as food, but unless you really like Sprouts, you'd be looking at it going, okay, that's just Sprouts. You wouldn't get the dopamine release because there's no positivity or positive benefit associated with eating the Sprouts. You might think, well, you may not think, I quite fancy some more fibre and greens in my diet, so you might have to eat some Sprouts, but it's not likely going to happen. The fact that you look at something which is unappetizing and is not sweet and not to give you that dopamine release, you're not going to get that cue to go and get it. That sort of thing happens with, unfortunately, high calorie foods which are laden with sugar, salt and fat. So if you do something called riding the wave, initially when you see it, you'll get this big tidal wave of dopamine build up in your body. And imagine if you're a surfer at the top, eventually that wave, as it comes in, will dissipate and leave. So as long as you remove the cue from your vision and you go, okay, right, I'm going to walk away from that, or I'm going to put the donuts away or whatever, remove the cue from your vision, the dopamine spike will diminish. And because you haven't taken the action of eating it, you won't get an additional dopamine spike from eating it, which then puts you up again, and it will eventually dissipate. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. You've got to remove it, obviously, to go and think about something else. But if you're not really, really hungry and you've just seen it all, and this could be donuts, cookies, it could be, when you go to the garages, you've got like, well, maybe not so much now, but when you've got like sweets and stuff, you just pick and take one. So those sorts of things, it's the picking thing. That's where riding the wave can come really into it. You're not really hungry, you're not actively looking for food. You see something, I'll have that. That's riding the wave. You can counter that by just removing the cue and walking away. Break cues is another thing that I use with clients. Break cues is where you want to snack on something, and this is something I do myself because I like to snack in the evening. So what I do, instead of sitting with a whole tub of Pringles, I empty some Pringles into a bowl, a small bowl at that. It's a measured serving, it's an amount, and when I'm sitting down eating, I just eat until the bowl is empty, and then that's of me a visual cue. It's called a break cue. You look at it, go, I've finished that. Now you have to make a conscious decision about going to get more food, or are you satisfied? Majority of the time, I've had my crisps, I'm absolutely fine with that. I put the bowl down, get on watching the TV or playing the PlayStation, whatever I'm doing, because I've now had the sensation of snacking. I've experienced that pleasurable sensation. I've had enough food that it's taken away the muncher brain, which is normally what stimulates snacking. It's taken that away, and it's just, we've had the snack, we've had those tastes, we've had those textures in our mouth, we're satisfied. Normally people keep eating and eating and eating. It's called mindless eating, and there's a really good book called Mindless Eating you might want to look at. And they just eat and eat and eat if the cue is in front of them. If the food is always there, you'll just keep picking and picking and picking, because all you see is the one thing you're eating, one at a time. And then when you finish the whole lot, you go, wow, did I eat all that? I wasn't that hungry, because you just kept on picking it. So using a break cue, and especially if you've got this binging urge about having it, if you put it into a bowl, essentially once you've eaten all, the binging cue will have gone, the binging urge will have gone, and you've regulated how much you've eaten. So that's a very powerful one. Works very well. It works for clients, works for me. Definitely recommend that one. The other thing is the 100-pound donut. I won't go too much into this because I've done a video on the 100-pound donut. 100-pound donut is when you look at something and you think, I would like that. It's similar to riding the wave. It's a conscious cue. It's a conscious, logical thought. Before you go and eat it, go, would I spend £100 on that donut? If you would spend £100 on a donut because you actually do want a donut, maybe you've had a really great week and everything else, and you do fancy some snacking or something treaty, then you would pay £100 for a donut. Well, go and have it. If it's just I just fancy a donut, would I pay £100 for it? No. So then you can make a conscious decision, I don't need that at the moment, and then you can employ, say, something like, riding the wave to remove yourself. But it's a conscious thing before the muncher brain, the sort of instinctual brain grabs hold of you. You go, hold on, would I spend £100 on that? Probably not. Okay, fine, I don't need it. So it allows you to break that. If you are really, really hungry, that's not going to work, because if you're really hungry, then absolutely you would spend £100 on a donut, because it's food and it's high calories. So you get an overriding of that sensation. But this works, again, if it's just I'm not that hungry. Oh, there's a donut. Would I spend £100? No, okay, I don't need it. So you walk away from it. The other thing you can do, is just something I've done well with clients, is the after dinner treat. Now, the thing is, when you are binging, when you want to binge, there is a hunger sensation associated with that, because if you are completely full up, you generally wouldn't get a binge sensation. You might get I quite fancy an ice cream. So then we go into restaurants, have a big meal, and you can't eat any more of that meal, but then they bring out the dessert list, and you can actually suddenly make room for dessert, because it's a different texture, it's a different taste. So now you've actually got a cue to eat. You don't eat loads and loads of dessert normally. You would only eat that's why the desserts are so small, and obviously it's a rip-off, but you get like a very small brownies and ice cream or something like that, because they know there's not that much room. You're probably going to waste it, and a little bit is enough. So if you apply this to your own thinking, so if you do get a really strong, I want to binge, I want a load of ice cream, everything else, what I would do is bring your meal forward that you had planned to go later on. Go and eat a sizable meal, which is calorie counted or calorie measured. So the meals that are on your safe list to have, go and have that meal, fill up on that meal, and say to yourself, look, we'll have that, but we'll have it afterwards. Because then you've eaten your big meal, you're a bit full up, you've got those full sensations going to your brain saying we don't need any more food. So when you actually get around to the binging food, which you would have piled in tons and tons of, and those things are generally lower in fibre, so they don't fill you up as much, so you can overeat massively very quickly. Because you're already full from the meal, then when you go and eat that, you actually become fuller very easily, but you still get that, I've eaten that nice food. So you get that reward sensation, but you've only eaten a little bit of it. So yeah, you have eaten more calories, but normally the safe meal that you had will be hopefully will be high in protein, complex carbohydrates, high in fiber, which is 3 things you really need to look at if you're trying to diet. And those things going into a meal will then offset your hunger. So when you're having that treat at the end, you'll only have a little bit. So it's the after dinner treat, the dessert mentality, that sort of thing. If you can do that rather than eating, going off for a whole tub of Haagen-Dazs or something like that, that will help you immensely. So there's just a few techniques of how to deal with binging, but you still do need to identify the reasons why you are binging. If you don't, you'll just keep on doing it again and again. Now, I appreciate if you are dieting for a show, there's a certain level of mental power you have to have there. Personally, if I was doing that again, I wouldn't do show dieting again, because I did it for 10 years. I'm not really fond of it. But if I was going to do it again, and when I've worked with clients who are doing it, we always incorporate some sort of sweet treats through the day in the form of fruit and low calorie sweet stuff. So you are getting those variation, that signal to your brain that you're having a variation of food. That's the only real advice I can give on contest dieting, because you have to have a certain mentality of, I'm going to eat way below what my calories are normally, because you're trying to get into a completely shredded condition. Now, once you are into shredded condition, you can actually ironically increase your carbohydrate, because you've got a lower level of body fat, and it goes more towards your muscles. However, you have to get there first. So there is a level of, you have to just grin and bear it sometimes on contest dieting. Normal dieting, everyday dieting, that's where I work normally with most of my clients. Most of the men I work with are looking to just lose body fat and bulk up in terms of muscle. So we look at restricting calories down, but still keeping their nice foods into their diet. So that's how I work with clients. If you're contest dieting, it's a different story, but some of these things will work for that. But sometimes you just got to grin and bear it, unfortunately, on a contest diet. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. Any comments, questions, please put below. And if there's a topic you want me to talk about, this topic was suggested by one of my followers, so I've now done the video. If you do want to talk about something, want me to talk about something, just drop a link in the comments or email me, and I will do a video for you, because I want to help you. This is why I do these videos, to give you more insight. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.